Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for how to scale your account-based content and empower your sales team. I'm so excited to hear from our special guests today, who are definitely marketing experts and great partners of us at Uberflip. First, just some housekeeping items. So any questions, please do feel free to enter them in the chat window to your right. We will be saving time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. And yes, this is being recorded, so no worries to take notes or take any screenshots of the slides. We will be sending the recording and slides later today after the webinar. And of course, we have a hashtag. We're trying out a new hashtag today, scaling ABM. So feel free to weigh in there, and you can also pose your questions there for our panelists as well. Really excited to introduce today's speakers. So first up, we have Peter Herbert. Peter is the CMO at Terminus. CMO at Terminus, not quite CEO yet. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
And next we have Justin. Justin Keller is the VP Marketing at Sigster. Justin, so great to have you as well.
So great to be here. I'm really pumped to be joining you guys today.
Great. And of course, my name is Tara Robertson. I head up revenue marketing here at Uberflip. So some of you have seen the slide before, but for those of you who haven't, just a really quick little bit about Uberflip. So Uberflip is a content experience platform that helps B2B marketers create personalized content experiences at scale. So in my role at Uberflip, I work really closely with both our content and our sales teams to hit revenue targets. And of course, we use our platform as much as we can to do that.
And let me tell you a little bit about Terminus. So Terminus is an account-based marketing platform that enables you to target key accounts, engage decision makers, and accelerate your pipeline at scale. So we do this through an account-based marketing, account-based advertising product, and account-based web analytics. We also offer marketing analytics and attribution through our recent acquisition of BrightFunnel.
Great, Justin.
And a little bit about, yes, thank you, Tara. So Sigster basically allows marketers to take over the signature line of all of their employees' corporate emails and insert the dynamic call to action banner in every one of them. It allows marketers to deliver really, really targeted content no matter who anyone in your company is emailing.
Great. And just really quickly, our agenda for today. So first, we'll talk about scaling content for ABM and why content is so crucial to succeed with ABM. Then we'll move on to why your sales team is your secret weapon for that account-based content. And finally, of course, we'll move into our Q&A. So Peter, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Terminus's formula for ABM success. So I'm just going to hand over controls to you right now. And
Great.
Take it away.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm super excited to be here today to talk about scaling account-based content. You know, a few years ago when I started doing account-based marketing, I actually felt like, well, doing an ABM transformation is, you know, certainly it's a big change for an organization. It's a fun change. It's a rewarding change. Some of those changes, you know, require a bit of work, but I felt like some of the steps like selecting target accounts, measuring ABM, and promoting to target accounts to create engagement were not actually my toughest struggles, or at least the things that my team and I felt like were some of the biggest mountains to climb. And one of the first hurdles that we identified as being you know, a real challenge for us, at least our perception at that time, was how do we, once we figure out all these target accounts that we want to go after and we figure out how to promote to them, how do we actually make our content more personal and relevant to them, and to do it at any kind of scale? Fortunately, we arrived at sort of a framework for doing this, and found some fantastic tools that made this process easier than we could ever imagine. So this challenge is near and dear to my heart, and when you think about the core of ABM is creating a great experience for your future customers and customers, then it's definitely a great one to embark on. But just kind of like take it back for a minute and look at some of the keys to account-based marketing. Is first, we need to focus on the right accounts. So we need to know who to focus on. I believe that letting the data inform us about which accounts we should focus on is a great way to approach this. And the goal is to just have a more efficient way of going to market so that we actually have time to create that personalized, more relevant experience. Number two is certainly understanding your buyers. We talk a lot about accounts, but there's people in accounts, and they're real people, and they have pain points and struggles and highs and lows and joys at their job, just like we do. And it's really important to understand the account and the company and what that company's business is, but also the people within the account. First of all, what their persona is, what types of content they would want to consume, how do we reach them, how do we engage with them, but also eventually getting to the point where you actually know the people themselves and you have great relationships and of course, human interactions outside of all of this digital work that we typically do as marketers. And at the end of the day, it's about creating this great experience, making it more personal and relevant, and it's all about getting the marketing and sales and even the CS team working together. And it's so important in this whole process to have easy access to the right content at the right time, so that we can create that great experience for our audience and the people we're communicating with, that we have consistent ways of promoting content, and that this all translates into a more efficient way of earning the right to work with those future customers and creating loyalty over time. So I like to, I'm trying to advance the slides here, Tara. They're not moving. Tara, would you mind just advancing the slide? Thank you. Actually, jump one back. There we go. All right. So there's a, Tara, just so you know, I don't have control of that right now, so I might need you to flip the slides for me.
No worries.
Sure. So there's a framework that I like to use to think about not only selecting the right accounts, prioritizing the right accounts, but also kind of informing our content experience. And I call that fit, intent, and engagement. So when you think about fit, that is looking at data that's telling you, does this company that I'm working with or considering working with match my ICP? Which vertical are they in? What's their business? And this is the beginning of sort of informing our content experience. The second piece of data that I use in my program here at Terminus is intent. So intent data helps you understand, outside of activity on your website, which keywords certain accounts are actively looking for and consuming content around. So this is extremely valuable, again, in informing the content experience and helping us find the right content to engage the people that we're looking to work with. And then the last piece of data is, of course, engagement data. And this helps us to understand what messages and content are already being consumed by people that we're working with at our target accounts, and it informs how to progress the content experience. It's also using this data as a great way to just sort of dynamically figure out which accounts you are focused on and are targeting in your marketing program. So to kind of recap that, my universe is fit, I prioritize with intent, and then I work to progress engagement. And the content experience is a critical part of creating that progression with an account, increasing engagement, and getting to the right personas and the entire buying committee when we're first starting to work with an account. You can go ahead and move forward. So the framework I like to use to think about prioritization that helped me and my team get my head around how much work were we going to do and how much could we do, how we were going to prioritize and focus our efforts. So there's a lot of very targeted things you can do to improve the experience of your future customers. And there's not many marketing teams out there that can run one-to-one campaigns and personalize everything for all the personas and account for thousands and thousands of accounts. So it's very important for you to break out what you're working on and give a higher priority to the accounts that make sense for your business. So for some businesses, this means that a higher tier or a higher priority are larger accounts or more strategic accounts. It may mean just based on the data that they're the hottest accounts, that maybe they're showing fit and engagement and they appear most likely to buy. But this is where you're going to do the most of your personalization. So at the top of that spectrum, this is very highly personalized. First of all, in terms of doing one-to-one campaigns, for example, account-focused content portals and landing pages, account-focused videos, collateral that's made for specific accounts, and even moving to the person-to-person or human-to-human types of content that we will make for a select few people that we have the capacity to build this content for. But there's some really easy ways of doing this now, which are videos that are targeted directly to people. A team can very easily spin up a content portal that, for example, is just from me to another person that I may have had a discussion with or talked to about my product or my company or a problem that they're trying to solve. And I always think old-fashioned, writing handwritten notes and doing direct mail is certainly an opportunity to deliver a certain type of content, which may make the biggest difference to people. The next tier down is what I would call sort of the tailored tier, and I'll show you examples of these in a few minutes. But this is the tier where you can segment in a broader way. It's not a one-to-one company content portal or message that has been specifically designed and created around a specific account, but it's for a certain segment. A segment can be, for example, a group of accounts that are in a certain buying stage, highly engaged enterprise accounts, for example, right? So you're progressing them through that journey. It can also mean just an industry vertical. We all know as marketers that changing our broad-based marketing and just even adding a vertical spin, whether it's financial services or healthcare, can make a huge difference to use the words and the language that people in that industry are using, even though our core product may be sort of the same for different verticals. In many cases, it's not. And then certainly, I'm a huge fan of intent, as I said before. So we now have the ability, there are technologies available so that we can understand what content an account is consuming and what keywords they're looking for. And then we can curate a content experience specifically designed around that intent, including everything from collateral to blogs to video that is on a certain topic. And then when you kind of move, further down the spectrum, that's where you have most of your broad-based marketing. And for many teams, they're creating content, they're writing blogs, white papers, creating web pages that could fit a very broad audience. But when you get into the tier 2 and the tier 1, this is where you're putting more of your time and effort into creating a more personalized experience. I do think that it's not just selecting the largest accounts. It can also really be prioritization based off of where they are in the experience and in the buying journey, how hot is the account. And for example, your company may consider just a certain stage, as long as it's a great fit, that we start triggering some of these tactics that are much, much more relevant to an individual person or for that individual account. Tara, if you just want to move it forward. So the first example, could you go to next slide, please? There we go. So the first example I'll show you, I mentioned intent being a driver of a level of personalization. So in this case, I'm showing you an example from my team here at Terminus where we are reading intent data. So we understand somebody, for example, is looking for account-based advertising. If you could just flip it back one, thanks. And that advertising, for example, is driving that person to a content portal that is specifically designed around account-based advertising. So the blogs, the collateral, the content that is within that portal is all centered on this specific keyword. And we can even do things like create videos from our team to put a face on this content that is centered on that specific keyword. Next slide, please. Great. This example comes from one of our customers, and what they're doing, they're actually using intent, but they're also basing their content on a specific vertical. In this case, it's the insurance industry. So they believe that if they curate and gather content in a single place that is based just around the insurance industry, that they will have a higher conversion rate. So what they're doing is they're bringing in intent data. They've already read fit data. They're triggering, trying to drive those personas and those accounts through both account-based advertising and sponsored content on LinkedIn to the content that they want to get them to. And when they reach that place, all of that content is curated to specifically address the challenges of that industry. Next slide. And then we're moving more and more personalized. This is an example of the same customer where when we were in the process of selling to them, we actually had a one-to-one company campaign. And we created content specifically for that company, both a collateral piece where we took their colors and the company logo, and we tailored content that we had so that maybe about 20 or 30% of it spoke directly to that company. We also created a video so that anybody from that company that would come to that content portal could watch a video that specifically addressed the problems of their company. And of course, we created advertisements that were designed specifically to catch the attention of that company. We ran a campaign and had a specific budget to push them to this content portal. And we've seen an incredible response to this type of marketing. It's just important, if you remember and look back at my slide about tiering, that you can't do this for everybody. I don't know any company that does 2,000 one-to-one campaigns all the way across their digital campaigns to the people in their organization. But what is important is that you figure out what is the capacity of your company, how many of these types of campaigns can you run. For some companies, it may be for 5 of their targets, it may be for 10, it may be for 100, but it's a very effective way of marketing. You can go ahead, next slide. And then we get to the most personalized part of this journey, which is, it's one person speaking to one person. So you've identified somebody, typically a highly valuable contact, somebody you're trying to reach. There are very likely not just answering emails, or certainly not templated emails from your team, and you've got to be a little more creative to come up with a way of delivering some content to them. So we like to think of this as a combination of tactics. We will send direct mail, write handwritten notes. Our team will create videos for people. And through content portals, we actually have this awesome capacity to drag and drop the most relevant or important content for that person, whether it's before a meeting when you're trying to get a meeting with them, or if it's after a meeting and you've just walked them through a bunch of ideas and you want to make sure that you're delivering the content that backs up what you guys were talking about in your conversation. There's really easy ways to give that capability to your sales team and allow them to curate and put together the best experience for your buyers. So I think the net of all of that is it's critical. The reason why we do account-based marketing is we want to create more relevant, personalized experiences. We want to be able to move hot accounts or our most valuable accounts through the funnel quicker, but do it in an efficient way. And that involves figuring out, who do you really want to focus at? What's your highest priority right now? And then taking the time and effort to do some of these more intense types of tactics to break through the noise and to reach those people and deliver a great experience to them. So with that, I'll pass the slides off.
Great, thanks so much, Peter. Lots of ABM gems in there. I feel like I've been seeing H2H everywhere lately, and I have a feeling that a lot of that is thanks to Terminus, so that's really great to see.
That's awesome, thanks.
So just kind of moving off of that theme of H2H, I think it's one thing that marketers have been talking a lot about lately, and I just want to reinforce that that's not always just one person to another person. A lot of the time, you're trying to do that for multiple buyers that are in the room at a time. So this stat from Gartner is really just focused on B2B purchase decisions. So obviously this varies industry by industry. But here at Uberflip, we actually did an analysis of our closed one ops, and we had an average of just over 7.5 contacts for every closed one op. So it was even higher than this stat. So I think it's just something to keep in mind that you're not always going to be able to personalize one-to-one for every single person, but as long as you can personalize for a couple of those key people or maybe just that account specifically, that's really heading in that right direction, and eventually you could start to scale that even more. And just to kind of bring that home even more, so leads nurtured with personalized content, we all know the value of personalized content, especially in the B2B space, but we're really starting to see results in this space. So 20% more sales opportunities, that's a number that I don't think any sales team would be sad about. I think everyone loves more sales opportunities. So definitely something to keep in mind. And I think this also just reinforces that with ABM, it's really key to have shared goals. So on our team, our goal for the ABM is all about opportunities generated. We're not focused on kind of the fluffier metrics like MQLs or new leads generated. So Peter talked a lot about the importance of the right content at the right time. So I don't want to get too repetitive here, but I just wanted to show an example of how our team is actually supporting an open opportunity. So right here on the left, you can see this is actually an ad that we were running on Terminus. And it's a little bit different. So we typically target marketers, but in this case, it was an opportunity that was kind of stuck at a later stage. So we tried running ads targeting that finance team just to try something different. And that was kind of a fun use case of how we tried out Terminus. So we were supporting that AE directly, much later stage than we normally would be able to. So because of the integration that we have with Terminus in our Salesforce, we were able to say, this op has been stuck, what can we do to get their attention? And that kind of just came right in there. And you can see when the finance team did click through, this is the content stream that they were led to. So that's their AE's face. They might have met him when he was in their office visiting. And then some more content to explain kind of what their marketing team would use Uberflip for and how they can help move the deal along. So I want to just move quickly into how we can support sales on the ABM side, because I feel like that's such an important piece of ABM is really working with your sales team. And Peter mentioned that a lot, working with sales and getting their input on those top accounts. So I'm not going to focus on all of these today because we are doing a shorter version of this. So I'm going to focus on really the third piece, which is tailoring that content and tailoring the experience to make it personal. So this is kind of an old school email, but I think it's a great example of how sales teams have been doing personalized content for years and years. So we've all gotten emails like this after we got off a phone call with a sales rep. You can see a lot of time went into this. I mean, it's not the flashiest email, but 7 different links to check out. If I was a sales rep and someone clicked on all those links, I'd be pretty happy. I don't know that that has ever happened, but it would be great if it did. So when you look at this, it's obviously personalized, but when you click on all of those links, it sounds like they're just generic ebooks, maybe something about Uberflip and Eloqua, but they're all going to be just standalone links that you're sending someone to and not really that full experience. So how can you make that experience a little bit more personal for your sales team? So again, for content to be effective in ABM, it has to be relevant and tailored to that buyer's specific needs. So this is another thing that Peter talked about, is really knowing your buyer and knowing their pain points and their needs. So by creating personalized content for those leads and accounts, you're sending them directly to the content you want them to consume, and hopefully all of that content will be tailored to them and their needs. You also want to keep that content focused. So if you're sending someone an email like I just showed with 7 different ebooks on it, you might not want that prospect to go down that path and read all these different ebooks and kind of not get back to you. You want a real clear call to action. And for most people, if you send them to your blog, you're going to have a bunch of different calls to actions in there. So that should definitely be different depending on the cycle of the sales cycle, that they're in. And lastly, you really have to make it easy and repeatable for not only the marketing team, but the sales team as well. So that's really where scaling ABM comes into play. If you can't scale something across your sales team and across all of your accounts, it'll be very difficult to not only implement, but also adopt it internally, which is always a struggle to get your sales team using a new tool. So make sure that it's definitely something you can scale. So just going back to that, we call these the old school black and blue emails. So when you compare this to something like this, at the bottom, in the middle here, you can see this is one of our customers, version 1, who actually creates personalized sales streams. And then through our sales extension, they actually can add a nice looking tile here to the email. So you're just sending people to one link. They're not opening up a bunch of tabs and getting lost. And from there, it's a really targeted collection of content that you as a sales rep want them to consume. So this is kind of a bigger example of that right here. But you can see that our sales rep, Chanel, has not only included a bunch of different content assets that would appeal to this account, but the stream is also personalized for them. So they see their logo, they see Uberflip, they really can make that connection. And when they share that around internally, they all know that this was created just for their account and it's not for anyone else. It's very specific to them. So another point I want to just bring home is, as we're supporting our sales teams, one thing that I like to ask people is, when your sales team is looking for content, where do they go? So this is a little bit scary to me, but this is the typical answer, is they go into Google and they type uberflip.com or terminus.com, type PDF, and hope that they find your newest pricing sheet or your newest one-pager. So obviously that's a big time suck, but it's also scary for us marketers because we're always trying to make sure that our teams are using the most recent asset, the most up to date, and obviously we want them to use things that apply to our brand guidelines. So we don't want documents floating around that aren't relevant or aren't up to date. So that kind of scares us all. And just to really hammer that home, so the average tech sales professional spends about 8 hours a week developing client presentations and 5 hours looking for marketing collateral, which is a little bit crazy to me because marketing spends all this time creating that collateral, creating content and ebooks and white papers, webinars. But if your sales team can't find it, they're not going to be able to use it. So that's definitely something to think about when you're creating all those content experiences for your accounts and your prospects. If your sales team doesn't know where to go and how to find that content, you're missing out a lot. And not only are you missing out on the sales team as a distribution engine, but you're also wasting the sales team's time. So with all these 3 activities here, your sales team could be wasting 17 hours a week, which is a little bit crazy, obviously. I mean, your content's already created. You definitely want to get it in front of that sales team and get it into their hands in the best way that you can. So that kind of ties right into email with Sigster. So Justin, I'd love to hand it over to you. Let me pass you the controls.
Yeah. Okay.
Great, take it away.
Thank you, Tara. So really good segue, because another huge time suck for salespeople is email. The average salesperson spends about 6.5 hours of their day in their inbox, probably because of that old black and blue email they're having to put together, right? But that is, I mean, that's like almost their entire week. So you can imagine the volume of emails that are going out from the average company, and I can help you get an idea of that math. The average employee sends about 10,000 emails every year. So the easy math is, if you have 100 employees in your company, that's almost a million, or it is a million emails every year. So it's a massive scale. And if you're on this webinar, then you've probably got, you know, a somewhat sophisticated outbound team. So that 10,000 number is probably actually really low. So when we're talking about how many emails are going out from your company every day, it dwarfs the number of WhatsApp messages and Google searches and Google display ads and text messages and snaps and all these things. This is definitely, every company's largest opportunity to create custom content is by kind of being able to intelligently insert the right content into those emails. So I think I'm not able to forward these slides either. So maybe you can, there you go, thank you. So we believe pretty much email is not only the highest volume channel, but it is also the most personal and authentic. Like email hasn't changed. It's still the way business gets done. But trying to make those thousands of emails that are going out from your company be on brand and relevant and personalized as they should be is where it gets really tough. And that's why email is such a huge time suck for salespeople. So here's, what you're looking at is how Sigstr does it. We take employee email, and that to us means Gmail or Outlook or even like SalesLoft or some sales automation tool. And we overlay the prospect attributes. So like their title or, the size of their company, where in the sales process they are, basically anything that your CRM or your marketing automation platform can tell you about a prospect or account. And when you combine those two things, it allows you to automatically, not automatically, or, at least short circuit the ability to insert the most relevant content into your most high volume channel. And with Sigstr, we do it by inserting a call to action banner that goes to like an Uber Flip hub or a personalized video or some kind of relevant piece of content. But you don't necessarily need something like Sigstr to make that happen. It helps, but you can do it with a content matrix. So if you can move forward for me, Tara. Oh, really quick, just to give you an idea of what this looks like in Sigstr. Sigstr listens to who's sending the email or who's receiving the email, or if the person is getting an email on a smart list in your CRM or your marketing automation platform, and it adjusts the call to action based on the attributes that you've configured. So in this case, you're looking at someone at Sigstr emailing a customer. It automatically inserts that kind of product education piece of content. If it's a prospect in a city where we're going to be hosting a event, they'll get an invitation to that local event inserted into their email. So it really allows sales teams to kind of not worry so much about taking the time to personalize every single email they're sending. They know that as long as the marketing team is aligning content to the right people, it's going to get in front of them with every email they send. So we're really just making sure that every email that a company sends, we're treating like a marketing campaign, and we're making sure that sales teams are getting the most out of it. So now we can go to the next slide, please, Sarah. So even if you don't have Sigstr, that's cool. Marketing can still be heroes to the sales team by making the recipients of all the content you're creating obvious with one of these kind of two-dimensional content matrices. So a lot like Peter was talking about earlier, aligning the right persona to the right content is important, but then aligning that persona to another dynamic, like, in this case, it's industry, makes that content way more relevant. And so you just need to decide which two dimensions are most important to you. Here at Sigstr, we market to markets. So we basically got the content for all the marketing personas involved in one of these buying committees. And then we cross-reference that with the industry-specific content we have so that it's relevant to not only their role, but their role within their industry. And for you guys on this webinar, it might look totally different to you. You might not even need these two. You might need to work in a third dimension, like geography or language, or even the sales stage. But the takeaway here is that buying committees, like you said earlier, Tara, are getting bigger and they're becoming more and more prominent. And if you're lucky enough to have something that you're selling where there's only one person in your committee, you're probably, you don't even need to be on this webinar. So really want to encourage people, sending a bunch of generic links to people in a group buying scenario, right? So if you get off the demo and you send one email to the entire committee with a bunch of links, it's a good way of basically making that content not relevant to anyone in there. But on the flip side, if you can make individually targeted and relevant content to each person in that buying committee, it's a very magical experience. And when they come back together and they've got different stories that they can kind of tell one another about what you're able to do for them, it makes that process a lot more magical. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Target content is great, but right time content is really magical. And I'm really glad that Peter mentioned this earlier, because this kind of moves content into kind of this black magic territory where it really blows the socks off of your prospects. This has been something that's been very, very powerful for us at Sigster, and this is kind of how we do it. You don't necessarily have to have Sigster do it. I think you could probably hack this together with your marketing platform, your marketing automation, but it might end up being slightly less personal. And the theme that keeps coming up here is kind of that H to H, getting it really personal and customized. But basically what happens when we deliver this right time content is, one example is when an AE completes a demo, they check that box in Salesforce, HubSpot's listening to that field and adds them to a smart list. So then the Sigster app listening to HubSpot says, oh, there's a new person in this list. For the next 2 weeks, let's include a signature campaign that thanks them for taking the demo and links them to a personalized content page or resource hub with all the kind of content they'd want to consume after the demos are moving down the funnel. Then after 2 weeks, they get automatically removed from that list, and the person will receive whatever content's most appropriate at that time. What's really cool to note here is that it doesn't matter who is sending the email, right? So in this case, it's like, it's probably the account executive that's sending the follow-up email. But even if one of our engineers that has never met this prospect just happens to be emailing someone with this domain, they're still going to be delivering the right content to them. So really, again, like, it hacks that scale problem and makes sure that every piece of communication that's coming out of your company is right on. So you probably have tools you need if you're on this webinar to replicate something like this. I just really want to encourage you to spend that time in your marketing automation system to set up the triggers and the alerts you need to deliver your prospects, a lot more insightful content that helps your sales team be a lot more effective. If we can go forward, I'll give you an example of a non-Sigster version of this. So one of our customers that does a really phenomenal job of this kind of personalized scaled content is Blue Wolf. And at any given time, Blue Wolf has dozens of custom content campaigns running to very discrete audiences at once. And Blue Wolf has like 1,300 employees around the world. And no matter which of those emails the employees is emailing home, the Blue Wolf marketing team is making sure that those emails always have the most relevant possible content in it. So, back to that math I mentioned earlier, they've got 1,300 employees. They're basically creating 13 million hyper-relevant calls to action every year because they're so good at slicing and dicing their audiences and associating the right content to those audiences. And as you can see, like this very top example, not all of these are very big audiences either, right? Even the company as big as Blue Wolf gets that you need to get that, really personalized tier 1 touch. So this top campaign was only shown to a handful of recipients, but it got the right person to click on the right content at the right time, and it creates a super magical experience. So I want to encourage you guys, we've been talking about scaling your content this whole time, but thinking about scale and micro audiences kind of seems counterintuitive. But remember to, kind of make your audiences as tight as you can when you're trying to deliver content to them. And that's about all I've got. Let's turn it over. I think we got some questions and answers now, huh?
Great. Thanks so much for that, Justin. So we do have a bunch of questions coming in. I think we have time for a couple. So this first one actually ties really nicely into, Justin, what you were saying about marketing being the hero with ABM. So this is from Charles, and his question is, how much of this should be marketing led versus sales? I think tier 3 is usually marketing led, but what about tiers 1 and 2? So from my perspective,
tier 1,
I feel like it really depends on the company, I was just going to say. But Justin, I love what you said about marketing being the hero. So I think maybe if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm thrilled to be a marketer because I think marketing is getting to play a bigger and bigger role in the sales process. And we're a little more like the Air Force in it, where we get to provide that kind of air coverage and make sure that all the troops on the ground have everything they need, and we can drop in when necessary. But I think really the ability to make it brain dead simple for your sales team is really the biggest contribution that marketing can give to the sales team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And when it comes to picking that top tier of accounts, I definitely wouldn't do that in a silo from sales. I would have someone from sales in the room all the time when you're talking about something like picking target account lists.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, this question sounds like it's more for you. It's from Scott, and he said, Oh yeah, this is definitely for you, Peter. He said, you said my team quickly spins up content portals. What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, so content portal, content stream. I'm actually referring specifically to Uberflip's capability. So the awesome thing about the Uberflip product is, as I mentioned in the beginning, it kind of takes a difficult problem and makes it super easy to manage. So imagine if you collected all of your content in one place, and without Uberflip, you might have to create like a landing page if you're exposing it internally, or a sales portal if you're exposing that internally. It would be very difficult, as Tara mentioned before, to sort of like create a drive or a site where you're keeping all your latest content up to date and things are sort of published automatically. With Uberflip, you can create streams where you can configure which content is available, and you can also put all of your content in one place so that your sales team can very easily, grab, for example, a white paper that is particularly relevant to a person that they're communicating with at a particular stage, and drop it into an email and link them back to a portal that's built just for them or their company, for example. So I was specifically referring to content portals or content streams, and I'm a huge fan of the Uberflip product for enabling that.
Thanks, Peter. I don't think I could have said it better myself, so thank you. This one also, I think, came during Peter's section, but we might all have something to add here. And so the question is, what do you mean by a hot account?
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to define a hot account, and the way I'll just tie it back to the slide that I presented on fit, intent, and engagement.
Mm-hmm.
The operating model that I've used at a couple different companies for a few years now is really looking at, we don't look at anything that's not a fit, first of all. We're very efficient in terms of being account-based and only working with accounts that are in our ICP. And then we're using data signals to tell us which accounts are most likely to buy or are actively in market. So those are intent signals and engagement signals. And the way that I found that you can widen the funnel and execute really effective ABM is, rather than just relying on inbound leads or form fills, that you're actually using all this amazing new data that we have available in particularly account-based capabilities that have come out in the past couple of years to understand that an account is a great fit, that it is showing buying signals in the market, and then understanding how active it is with your company and with your website without even them ever filling in a form or being in your CRM. So to me, that is sort of my definition of, it's certainly at my company, a great way to look at, which accounts should we focus on and which people should we be reaching out to and connecting with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just add that I think, the model you've got, Peter, is great. And I encourage all marketers to really lean on the data just because it helps keep you sober about who you should be spending all your time targeting. I think it's super easy to get attracted to big, sexy brands. And I mean, we'd all love to have like Nike as a customer, but that doesn't mean you could be spending a lot of time and effort trying to nurse an account that'll never pop for you guys. So yeah, I 100% agree with Peter.
Yeah, I agree also. I think one thing I would add on is looking at engagement, not just on your site, but also engagement at events and with your sales team, because a lot of the time your sales team is really the one that's reaching out more actively than you are. So they can have kind of a better angle on that. And whether you use a tool or if it's just anecdotal conversations on how the outreach is going, usually that helps have a mix of both.
I 100% agree.
Great. Just one last question, again for Peter, but maybe we can all weigh in. So this is really kind of surrounding, obviously Terminus is an ad platform, but do you have any best practices specifically for ABM when you're doing online advertising?
Yeah, I would say some of the key things with online advertising are, first of all, um, uh, pick the right accounts. So the account selection process is important with that. But I think segmenting and even micro segmenting as much as possible within your business based on data is a good way to look at it. You can still be effective if you have long lists of accounts, but online advertising, like everything else we're doing, is more effective the more targeted, relevant, and personalized you can get. So I like breaking things down into different segments of accounts. So, for example, that can be based on a vertical, and then further breaking it down into stages, and then running progressive campaigns. So when an account moves to a different stage in the buying journey, the way we manage it and you manage it in Salesforce, that you're actually showing them new content that's appropriate for where they are. Because people who are at just learning about your company and are becoming aware are consuming very different content and responding to ads with different messages when they're in the evaluation stage further in the funnel.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just from, I'm not an expert by any means. Our ABM marketer definitely uses Terminus more than I do, but just anecdotally from our campaigns that we've been running in Terminus, the smaller our target list is, the better the campaign does, just because that content is super, super relevant to that, not only that account, but the pain points that they're experiencing.
Totally. And I think it's important to note, like, when you have that advertising, that list of accounts you're advertising to, keeping that segment consistent through the entire buyer's journey is super helpful and effective.
Definitely. Great. Well, we're just running up on time here, so I think we'll wrap it up. But thank you so much again to Peter and Justin for joining us. You had some really great insights on ABM and sales enablement, and I'm sure we'll get a lot out of the recording as well when we share that with everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you guys so much.
Great.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.